Yeah.
No, yeah. Coming live from 1950 South Shepherd here in El Reno.
About to blow my ear. All right. Well, it's Tuesday.
Are we alive?
Oh, yeah, we're live.
Oh my god!
You didn't know.
No, I didn't know the whole time. Well, here we are for Trauma Tuesday.
I'm sorry you had to experience
Yeah.
Well, we just figured out. Well, Darian just figured out
Mhm.
how to play with the soundboard. So.
Yeah, and so we were over here crying, laughing.
Oh yeah,
At everything. So it's
good
pretty
time. It was a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's Trauma Tuesday. Um, and it is Alcohol Awareness Month.
Mhm.
So for the month of April, like that could be a discussion all day long. Like what effect has alcohol had on your household? I know for me, like the trauma that it's caused is like, there's too many incidents to count. Just in my, just as a child, not so bad, around my mom, because we live with my grandma and she wasn't allowed to drink at home. So most of the time she would go do her thing with my aunts, and which was, I love my aunts, so we weren't really exposed to it. Maybe not until later in life when my mom got her own house, and the partying, like if she had a day off, they were kicking it, So, but when I moved to El Reno, I would come to El Reno for every summer and every Christmas, spring break, all them, maybe a weekend every once in a while, but every summer and Christmas break was spent here. And I can think of so many incidents where, waking up in the back seat of a car, not knowing where I'm at, all by myself, middle of the night,
Mhm.
or watching my dad and my Uncle Crow fight. Or, like there's just so many instances where uh, I can talk about, the effect that alcoholism had on my family. I think a great thing to point out in my life is knowing that maybe my grandma and my dad, they were the last two deaths in my family, and they weren't exact, especially my grandma, like, she lived a good life her whole life, no drugs, no alcohol, she smoked cigarettes like it was nobody's business, like a burning building, but I mean, other than that, she was a sober person. But it was crazy watching all of her kids, whenever I was 10. My uncle Bobby died in a car wreck right there in front of Whitewater. My uncle Crow, 2 years later, drowned in Lake El Reno. And then whenever I was 16, my aunt Erin, she died from cirrhosis. And I guess their dad, he got struck by a truck in Phoenix, Arizona, and got drugged for 2 blocks. I guess the driver just kept going. So I mean, I can think of like all the effects that this had on my family. And the bad thing is that I'm still watching it continue in my family. You know, um, all my cousins, which I consider my brothers and sisters. They're all my first cousins, but if you ask me, they're my brothers and sisters. Most of them are still in their addiction. Because I felt like because we were left to fend for ourselves so young. Nobody ever gave us the life skills that, because if anything, we grew up and were raised to be, like even though we didn't drink and have the problem at the time, but you know, like the way that we lived, like we carried ourselves like we were alcoholics.
Yeah, survival mode.
You know, like if we never took a drink in our lives, we were raised to be alcoholics. You know, like, so I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to anybody, but I mean, I know for me it does. You know, uh, to be taught how to live in survival mode. You know, there was no tomorrow. You know, it's what you can get now and today. You know, like you know, there's you know, you don't think about there's no tomorrow. You know, it's kind of like you live life, you know, like it's your last. So, you know, I know for me, you know, it took a long time. You know, I didn't get sober till I was 41 years old, you know. So it's kind of like just seeing like, did I stay sober long and you know, did I did do it too late in life, and like the effects still, like, are my kids going to have this? You know, am I going, you know, so if I'm worried about if my kids, you know, if it's gonna happen to my kids, are my grandkids gonna, you know, be affected by, you know, by alcohol? And you know, and I think about it, you know, there's so many times where, you know, there used to be family drunks. You know, everybody knew who the family drunk was, right? Now we got family tweakers, family pillheads. You know, like we're all sitting at the same dinner table now.
Mhm.
You know, like uh and so, you know, times have definitely changed, but I feel like the sickness is still there. You know, like the way to combat this thing is it's still there. You know, if it wasn't for Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't think I would, you know, even have a chance to be living today. None of the things that I have in life, you know, I don't even think I would be able to experience them, you know, after getting sober. And, you know, I'm coming up, you know, I know no fronts, but I'm coming up on 4 years, you know, maybe, I don't know, close to something like 22 days from now, 3 weeks. I'll get to experience, you know, celebrating my 4 years. So,
2.5 weeks. Yeah.
so, what? How has alcohol affected you and your family?
Mhm. Well, good introduction, Barry.
Yes.
I'm Darian, by the way.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Pretty sure they know who you are.
No. I mean, mine was all exposed to at a young age, and just kind of living through it into my teen years, with my mom and stepdad at the time. Just drinking was just a daily thing, a
Yeah.
weekend thing. So like, if they went out on Friday, I knew they probably weren't coming back till Monday morning, Sunday night, um, and to where after they had my sister, like I was taking care of the baby pretty much most of the time because they were just gone for days on end, and so it made me grow up faster, I think, because
Yeah.
I was more independent and then had to take care of my sister. So it taught me like how much it can take away from a family, and how non involved people could be once alcohol came into the mix. And so I think that's one of the critical things that I always talk about is I saw what addiction did to my family, but I also saw what recovery did to my family. And so to where I could see the younger, or well, I mean, the not the elders in my family, but the ones right below them would all be, going through their rite of passage almost. It seemed like was to have, a problem with any kind of substance or just a dependency, if you will. And so I saw my elders, which were almost all in recovery, and I could see how peaceful their life was and how they had everything together. But once alcohol came into the mix with their kids, I can see that kind of ripple effect where it would be disrupting like the home life. Like I changed schools. I went to 6 different schools by the time I was in 5th grade, I think 5th or 6th grade, and I was from here in Oklahoma or here in Washington because I would just be moving back and forth just to live with my grandma, or then come back and then live with my mom, then go back and then just keep going. And so I didn't have stability. Like I would be in a school for 1 grade, maybe at most, and then move up to a different school. And so it taught me, you know, to ride the wave almost, like just to go with the flow, just to, value what you have at the moment. And, not everything's permanent. And so that's kind of what I got away. But once I saw recovery impact my family, I saw the amount of healing that could go on, the amount of mending all these burnt bridges or what you thought were burnt bridges.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can see the positivity that came out of it, the connections kind of reignite, and then like that nostalgia. Like, so a lot of it kind of came with like, being around my culture again after a while. And so, like, that's something I didn't experience for, 10, 15 years, it seemed like. But, you know, I think, I learned because my mom got sober at a very critical part of my life, and to where it made me want to be sober. But I still have those same fears that you have about, I worry about my kids. Are they going to develop the same kind of problem? Because I know, like, deep down, if I started drinking instantly, I would be in the same boat. Like,
Yeah.
why should I think that I'm any different than,
Yeah.
everybody that I know in my family? And so I feel like it's going to be an interesting thing to try to teach my children, because they haven't seen it firsthand. Like, they haven't seen my mom, their hootsie, you know, in a bender or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And same with, their what did Des call it? Ethatinewa, a good grandma. Like, so they haven't seen their great grandma, tearing it or anything. So they see is their sober relatives. And so um it's gonna be hard to, teach them that, like, all this thing about alcohol, like, it looks like a celebration, but it's, more devastation than anything for our people specifically. But, in general population, it's treated as,
Yeah.
celebratory thing. And so, or like, if you lose your job, oh, alcohol is there to help you through your
Mhm.
day or something like that. And so it's going to be a learning curve for all of us, I think, of trying to teach them, we're not anything special when it comes to addiction. Like, we are 100% very, 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 very likely that
Susceptible.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I just didn't pour alcohol on alcoholism in
Yeah.
my life, but I know for a fact that, you know,
You'd definitely be
I'd
part of the
I'd
club.
I'd be crying the whole time. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I wouldn't even be a fun one too. Just hear me singing.
Yeah.
You'd be the downer guy.
Yeah.
Crashing out with that drumstick that you always got.
Yeah, my emotional support drumstick.
Yeah.
Be like, why couldn't I ever sing?
Well, good afternoon, little brother.
Mm-hmm.
Glad you could tune in.
Good
Who else?
afternoon, Isaac.
Mr. Rose.
Mr. Rhodes.
Good afternoon, brother. Well, I think about like that story about picking up that snake.
Mm-hmm.
I remember so many times I would be mad at my dad, be mad at my mom, for the things that they used to do. I remember one time after my uncle Crow passed away. And man, like, my Uncle Crow, Philip Botone, when he, like it was nothing to come home and see him passed out on in the yard, on the porch, or even downtown.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like it was nothing. I mean, it was so normal to see that. And man, when he drowned, and my family was so devastated. I remember all of his kids, me, Hochny, and Junior. I remember how hard we were crying. And I remember his friends were coming by, to view the body. And they asked us, are you his kids? By the way we were like reacting and crying. And we were just like, no, like that was our favorite uncle. Like I remember how hard we took that. And it didn't matter to us if, we didn't care if he did drink every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was our favorite uncle because he was always laughing. I can still hear his laugh even as I speak right now. I can hear his laugh. And I feel good, that I can remember him that way. You know, uh, but even after seeing all that, like that story goes, that story has to be picked up and carried up the mountain. And whenever they got there, he bit that person that was carrying him, and then told him, "You knew I was a snake. That's what we do. We bite people."
Yeah.
And even though I knew that, like because that's what everybody else was doing. I remember being 11 years old, and that's the first time I got took home for being drunk. 11 years old, and I was swimming in the Thomas pool. Me and George Whiteshield jumped in the pool and went for a swim, during Pioneer days in Thomas. And I got taken home by the cop, Mike Day, Boss Hog, and got he took me home, and man, my mom beat the brakes off me. Like, she held a fly swatter in her hand, but she was just like cutting me up with it,
using fists.
Yeah, she was. She was punching me, like worked me over good, man. She did. Like, and I was the only one that got in trouble. George didn't even get in trouble. He got home and got, he got. I think his grandma just got onto him. They didn't get spankings up there. So like, you think that stopped me? That just meant I had to be sneakier. Like
that was the lesson you took.
Yeah, that was. Well, damn, I got caught.
Can't go in the Thomas pool.
Yeah.
No public places.
Yeah.
No more public places.
Yeah, only people's houses.
So it was like, then I moved to El Reno. And not to say, I was already drinking in Thomas. I remember, my cousin that came yesterday, my cousin Robert. One time they had these big plans to go out and drink. And my mom must have knew it, because they had my brother Brandon with them. And Brandon was already alcoholic by the time he was, 13 or 14. And he had already been to treatment. And when they came pulling up, they said, "There's your mom, duck, 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 duck." And I just like, just put my head between my knees and sat there. And my cousin Robert put his elbow on my back. My mom pulled up, and she was with my Aunt Teddy, and she goes, "Have you seen Barry?" And they were like, "No, I think he's, we haven't seen him." "Well, you boys better not be drinking tonight." "No, we're not." She's like, "Oh, boy, I see that ice chest in the back." She's talking about
Your back?
Yeah. She's talking about him having his arm on my back. And what do we do? Yeah, we went and got lit, I was probably about 13, but then I moved to El Reno, and it was like on a whole nother level. I did go find them places where I could drink. I did go find them places where, you could do, you could do whatever you wanted. And not to say that, you couldn't go over there and just be a damn fool, throw up on yourself. And no, it was another alcoholic family that had the same troubles that I did. But if you wanted to drink, you had to learn how to maintain. And here I am, a kid.
They're trying to do harm reduction.
Yeah, trying to do harm reduction with, like, "Hey, boy, that's enough. You had enough. You're done for the night." Then we're stealing beer and going and sitting on the back porch. But I remember, then whenever I was about 14, me, my cousin Toby, and my cousin CJ, Toby Morales and CJ Killsnight, rest in peace. We went and we drank all night. And by this time, my dad is trying to straighten up. By this time, my dad, has been sober, maybe about a year. He's been sober. He's trying to get his life together. And it seemed like when he quit, like I picked it up. Like I was mad. I had a lot of resentments about his drinking. So he found a way to excuse it. So did I. I thought that was my destiny. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to drink myself to death like the rest of my family. So, we stayed up all night, and I don't even remember where we were trying to go, But I was like, we're walking by my grandma's. I said, hang on, let me stop. Let me go get some clothes so I can have something to change into. And we're hammered, bro. Like all three of us, we're liquor drunk. We stayed up all night and we drank all night. And then we bought a bottle whenever the liquor store opened. So we're hammered. And I go home and my dad and my grandma are there. And I remember them both standing there. Like my grandma had her hands on her hips and my dad was sitting there crying. And, I broke his heart, He seen me drunk. And I thought I was playing it off. Had no idea that I'm just stumbling all over,
leaning on
slurring my words, cussing around, No idea, bro. And little did I know that that was gonna be, like 30 more years of, pain and heartache. Nobody told me. No, but I knew, just like picking up the snake story, I knew it was gonna happen if I tried this. And I didn't care, I don't know, like I lost when I moved to El Reno, it was like my mom and my dad. My dad was he started going to college, and my mom, I started getting in trouble. Like getting in real trouble, like, getting accused of all kinds of stuff. Yeah, allegedly I was doing all this stuff.
Accused.
Yeah, just getting accused.
Yeah, not convicted.
Yeah, not convicted. So it was like, I don't see what other choice I left them. I had to get out of Thomas. So, my dad's living in Okmulgee, so I can't. He lives in student housing, so I can't go live with him. And I had to be left there with my grandma. And and then I got my older cousin Bush. Poor guy. And which I'm proud of my brother Bush because he is sober today. He did go through a program and he is sober today. I'm very proud to say. But at the time, like I'm sitting here moping around about my life, and then my big gangbanging cousins in the other room, treating me like Debo. Like, yeah. Quit acting like a little, come on.
What chain?
Yeah. So I mean, it was definitely a recipe for failure. But nobody told me that. It was just such a normal thing for natives, in this community.
Yeah.
To do what I was doing, nobody batted an eye. I could go, all my friends, I could go to their house drunk. And, nobody would say anything. And those are the places that I found. So like, I remember Buns' mom, my Aunt Mary, bless her heart, she told me, I'm so proud of you, Barry, because every time I used to hear your name, it was always something bad that you did. Or, and I think a majority of it is I would get accused. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, I wasn't like, I wasn't
that bad.
I wasn't that bad, like.
And I remember almost a quarter of that.
At least 1/8 of it, But I mean, like
That 1/8, that wasn't bad at all.
But it was like I think it was just the potential of what I could do, because I had this street life, and then I had this where I had to be in front of my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like I definitely kept them separated. One time though, I will admit, I stole my cousin Big Will's bag of candy on Halloween. I will admit I did that, Auntie. Yeah,
That's real rough.
And
Wow.
But
I thought we knew you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, didn't know we hired a criminal.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But I would say I would say, things got pretty bad. By the time, I went to prison whenever I was 16 for a drive-by, a drive-by shooting in Oklahoma City. Luckily, nobody got shot except my friend who was in the car with us, which was weird, but it's just kind of like, was it enough? It wasn't until I would have to say my son was born. And I remember I had gotten stabbed in the head. Like see, when is Colony? Colony is Labor Day. So his mom was pregnant with him, and I had gotten stabbed in the head. And I had this open wound on my head, and I didn't go to the hospital. I took it like a man. And because I thought
I cried at home and not at dog.
yeah.
'Cause I had a bag of candy.
Yeah. Well, it was because the guy that stabbed me, I didn't know whether he lived or not. So I remember my brother Eddie. I was walking by the park, walking by Frank Knight Park, and my brother Eddie pulls up. And I already knew he was mad by the way he said, "Hey boy, come here." And I walk over there and, "What's up?" "Yeah, cool guy." And he just starts, "Boy, did you get stabbed in the head?" And I would say for at least 3 or 4 years, nobody ever spoke to me like that. Nobody ever said, "Hey, you can do better, man." Because if you were saying that to me, I was probably getting rid of you. I was probably, just quit hanging around you, because I wasn't trying to hear that, So, then of course, I go to prison, or it's when I got out of prison, and then I had my son Isaiah. And then it seemed like that's when, when a little boy realizes that nobody's coming to save him, I feel like that's when he becomes a man. When you realize that nobody's coming to save you. Like I was, man, I was struggling bad, I wasn't suicidal, but I mean, I didn't think a lot of myself. I never, I got my GED in prison. I thought, which was a great feat for me, because I only really had a 9th grade education. I dropped out as a sophomore. I got kicked out with like 2 weeks of school to go my sophomore year. So the last grade I completed was my freshman year. So I did get my GED. I wasn't no, idiot, all the way. Yeah. But, if it came down to you, man, I probably would have hurt you real bad, if I had to, I could definitely defend myself. And when I think about all of this today, and I think, could anybody have said anything? Like who could have said something to me? And then these men do pop up into my head. I think about my Uncle Charlie. I think about my Uncle Robert, my Uncle Frankie. My dad, me and him didn't have that type of relationship, where I couldn't stand when he got on to me, because now I'm like, oh, now you want to be a good dad. I wasn't trying to hear that, and he always went about the wrong way. He never was like, we never had this
Like heart to heart.
yeah, man to man talk. He always talked to me like I was a little boy, so I mean, which is understandable, because nobody ever talked to him that way. He never had that.
Yeah.
So how can I expect that from him? And when I think about it today, it's like, because I see so many young kids out there that have the exact same problem that I have. I watch these young men. Man, most of them are my nephews. That's how I'm watching them on Facebook. watching them on Snapchat, like all these different platforms, social media. And man, I can just see myself right in the middle of that crowd, like with the guns, with the, trying to be from a gang, like, man, luckily, I will say that one of the greatest things that my dad ever did for me was he talked me into like becoming a dog soldier. Whenever I was 15, I got initiated whenever I was 15 years old in 1995. Didn't do a lot of great things after that. I went to prison in 96, got out in 97, had my son in 98. And, it was like, then I had Isaiah, which he just turned 27 the other day, and then I had my daughter Brianna. Then Leon, you know what I mean? Like I did go get a job, but the sickness was still there. Anytime I had a hard, I worked hard, man. I always worked hard. Anytime I had a good or bad day, I would find a way to make sure that I got a beer in me, and then if I had one, man, you might as well say I'm not coming home until Sunday night, Monday morning, that, I can see where, it doesn't matter. You can change where you're at. You can change who you are. You can change your friends. You can change so many different things. Like, maybe if I do this week, I'm not gonna drink. Maybe if I do this, I'm not gonna do cocaine. Maybe like there's so many instances where I seen that it doesn't, like my sickness, and I'm just talking about me and my sickness. It didn't matter what I did, where I was going, who I was around, what I was like involved with. I was gonna get drunk, and I was gonna do whatever that comes with it. So I see it today as like that's my medicine today. That's what I can give back to my community. Like my brother David Levi says, you work on yourself, you work on your family, then you work on your community, and then you work on your nation. So it's like I can, like, to me, like that's what I'm able to do today. Like I see myself in all my nephews. I see myself making the exact same mistakes that they did, or they may never even realize that there is a better way. There is a better life, and if I had my way, I would be able to sit down with every single one of them and just go over, and I understand, kids are, they're gonna experiment. They always got to go see for themselves, but what did you say? Like, because I know you went through the same thing. How did you avoid not ever taking part?
No telling. I mean, like I was offered, alcohol, weed, pills, everything, but I just was not interested. Like, and so like I had a good group of friends where they wouldn't keep like forcing it or anything like that. And so, I mean, if I was like, "Nah, I'm good," like they'd be like, "Oh, okay," and then like I would get water, or in the Navy I would always be DD, and so they would just buy me food instead. And they already, like, because I was Indian, they always assumed I was like
Oh,
an
yeah,
addict and I
yeah.
was in recovery, and so I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's go with that." I mean, whatever makes it easier for you guys to
I'll
accept.
get drunk and beat you all up.
Yeah, so better not give me anything.
Don't
Yeah.
test me.
Yeah, but yeah, I just had a good group of friends that knew, like I stuck to what I said. Like I didn't want to drink or anything like that. Like I'll be, the person that's around it the whole time. Like there's like this
The
little
buzzer?
yeah, there's like this little meme or a little video of like this old white guy, and they're like in a weed circle, and then he's just all smiles, and they pass him a blunt, and he just passes it over, and they're
That's
like,
me.
"That's you, Darian."
That's me. Today, that's me.
And so like yeah, I mean, I just had a good group of friends. Like whenever they would have their fun, I would still just be. I mean, I'm just goofy anyway, so they're like, well, I guess
Hell yeah.
yeah. They're like, I guess if you drank, it'd probably be worse, and so I guess it's good that you don't. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And so yeah, that's what I was like. Yeah, if I drink, I'll probably start crying. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I just had a strong will, and like the temptation was always there. It's just I think I would constantly think of my grandma who's in recovery, my grandpa who was in recovery, my aunts who were in recovery at that time, and then the ones that weren't, and then about how like I would have to babysit them or my mom,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I don't want to have to deal with that at all. And so I think that constant exposure to people in recovery like boosted my will,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's kind of just how
I like that. I like that. I'm hoping what we do has the same effect.
Yeah.
Like people are seeing like me, like seeing me in a different light. Understanding who I used to be,
Mhm.
who I used to get accused of being. Yeah.
Yeah, not convicted.
Not convicted. But it was like I want to make recovery cool for people.
Yeah.
Like it and it's got to be a thing of attraction,
Yeah, not
not
yeah.
promotion.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we're getting a lot of people that say that sobriety seems cool, and I think it's just because we're just goobers, like at heart, like we're just dorks, like that just have a good time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing but laughs up here, and then like I think it's funny seeing like Desi and Theta, like their first couple days, they didn't realize like how often people come up here just to
Yeah.
die laughing, and then they go back downstairs. And
Yeah.
we're just like, yeah, we're just hanging out. This is our job, honestly. We're just therapists.
Yeah.
It's just unofficial.
Talking about
Take a
Janet and
picture.
her eggs.
Yeah.
Janet and her egg.
Yeah. Yeah, that. Yeah, Andrea. coming up
Yeah.
here, everybody.
Andrea, her roses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like girls have roses. But I do, I feel like I can see where like I don't know, like maybe because of what we deal with, and how we try to help people, because to me it's like addiction is like a mental health crisis.
Mhm.
At one time, whether it was peer pressure or for some reason a person feels like it's okay to hit that joint, to take that drink. Like me, like I spent my whole childhood trying to sneak a beer. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even understand why.
Mhm.
To sneak one beer just to say, "Oh, that's nasty," like
That was the ultimate goal.
and but I also remember the times where I hated alcohol, because of what it was doing to my dad. Man, my dad was my hero. And I remember after I remember living with him. My dad was going to school at OU, and this is in 1988. We live in Norman. I was going to I can't remember the name of that school. Maybe Madison. But anyways, it's over there by the duck pond, by right down the road from the campus. And he left me there for a week by myself while he was just out drinking.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't for my Uncle Tex, the great cattle warrior that he is, my Uncle Tex, Donovan Brown, he was going to school to be a lawyer at the time. And him and my dad, they were smoking buddies. And, that's who took care of me that week. He would take me back with him to Anadarko, stay the night with them, have to get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever time and drive me back. And then he would drop me off at school. And then I would ride the bus home and wait on him to get out of class. And he would come in. He'd be like, "Is he back?"
Mhm.
Like, no. you know, like for a whole week. You know, and I just remember thinking like, you know, like, and then, okay, so then I asked to go stay the night with one of my friends. His name was Johnny Newberry. And when we go over there, his dad's taking us to all these stores to steal. We go to Anthony's and we steal all the gold out of this display box that they had on the counter.
Accused, not
Yeah,
convicted.
allegedly. You know, we go to all these different places, and I'm only 8 years old. We're stealing like allegedly stealing, you know, all this jewelry,
Grand larceny at that point. Right?
and we take it back to Johnny's dad's house, and he has us going from door to door to sell it. And then we bring all the money back to him, and he goes and buys a fifth of Jack Daniels. And when he gets back from the liquor store, he gives us a drink. And I remember taking that one drink and just getting warm, like tried to handle it, you know, like I'm 8 years old. And I got drunk that night. You know, and he even gave me a 6-pack of beer.
To wash it down with.
Yeah. But I told him, you know, just like my women, I don't chase them. Yeah. But no,
Hey, 8 years old. Just give me my Snickers. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
But you know, it was just one of those things where it was just so normal. And you know, the crazy thing about it is whenever I went to prison, whenever I was 16, is I ran into Johnny Newberry. swear he was 18. Because when I was in 3rd grade, he was in 5th grade. So I go to prison and we're sitting there talking and we just realize who each other are. Hey, I know you. You know what I mean? He's like, hey, I know you. You know what I mean? Like, it was like the weirdest thing.
Weirdest reunion ever.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, you got me smoking cigarettes. First time I got drunk was at your house. You know, like,
Yeah.
well,
Allegedly.
where did,
Allegedly.
you know, yeah, allegedly. Where did that lead us? You know, we're sitting in prison.
Conviction.
Yeah, convicted.
I can't believe
Finally.
it took us this long to find each other.
You know, and I mean, I asked him about my friend Chad, you know, from Norman. He was like, well, the last time I seen Chad is I shot him up before when he was asleep, and he woke up and had a heart attack and almost died. And he's just sitting there cracking up about it.
It's just everyday thing.
Yeah, like, so yeah, I mean, I remember thinking, like, even though I hated alcohol, it was nothing for me to try it because that's what everybody else did.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, you were the oddball out if you didn't. Like, I probably would have beat you up, Darian. You know, I'm not even
We
gonna
could have duked it out.
picked on you. You know,
Yeah. I would have only been
what's
like,
up, dude?
like 2
Yeah.
though by the time. You would have been stealing my bag again. Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Sorry, Dare. I didn't mean to. I didn't know that was him. He was way bigger than me. Yeah.
He didn't need it.
Yeah.
I was helping him.
I was trying to grow. I'm only 4'6".
Do we have any good comments? Can you go back up to the top of the comments?
Yeah. Do you want to read them in the deep voice?
Yes.
All right, hold on.
Wait, I can't read them anyway.
No, I'm gonna have Carmelo read them
Okay.
In the deep voice.
in the deep voice. All right, hold on.
All right.
Go ahead, Carmelo.
Charlene says, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
David Deere says, good afternoon.
Don't go, David.
Heather Monroe says, good afternoon from Oklahoma City. Sober date 5/23/2016.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Thank
Levi
you.
says, we found a couple snags. I found a couple snags in my sleepy voice. That must have brought back a
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Mary Faye says, my sobriety twin from George Hawkins Treatment Center. I think she was talking about Heather.
Oh, that's cool.
2016. Love you and proud of you, Heather. We were the 2% from our group to make it. And
Wow.
since.
That's
made
cool.
a bed that we would be that two. We made a bet. I assume she meant that we would be that 2%.
Wow, that's
said
cool.
you were rugged because you were stealing from kids.
Definitely.
And
Allegedly.
Allegedly,
Magdalene
yeah.
Anessa says good evening.
Good evening, sister.
Mr. Levi says he's straight out of Concho with 601 days.
Oh,
Nessa says she was hard headed.
yeah, I would have to agree. I would have to agree.
Shirley
sis.
said Tracer used to tell them horror stories.
Yeah.
Laura Candy says amen.
Aho, Laura.
Anessa says it is what I make it because it's everywhere.
Definitely. Definitely.
But thankful I'm getting stronger.
So am I. So am I, sis. Stay with it. Stay with it.
Shirley says I think all we can do is communicate our experiences with our children. Others who are young, try to tell them what we needed to hear.
Yeah.
And Nadia says, I'm still working on myself. Sometimes I feel like I'm so far behind. Is there a time limit on working on yourself?
Hell no. I would say progress, not perfection.
Yep.
Definitely progress. It does. It's nobody's timetable. You're on God's time. You got to remember that it ain't up to nobody. It's gonna be up to God. And as long as you can stay sober for another day, then I promise you're winning.
Not a race.
And Alex Dean says, nah, I've come to realize that you're going to continue growing and changing. I've learned to adapt to change, although I didn't like it. I know that its creators pointing to direction where I may learn something I don't know yet. You're doing great.
Oh, thank you, Alex Dean.
All right, I'm gonna take out the big voice.
Yeah, do the little one.
Sorry.
Oh, a little voice. All right, now,
Yeah.
hold on. For who?
for was that it, Carmela?
Who would have thought we would be such children with this?
I
thing?
know, right?
We were over here crying earlier, laughing.
At least I didn't take no one's candy.
Yeah. All right, we're back.
Yeah.
We're back to normal.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, I think alcohol plays a part in all of our lives, no matter if we, consume it or not. It's not just a one person effect. It affects families, it affects communities, nations, all sorts of stuff.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, I think, just talking about it day by day is like sometimes that's all we can do
Bringing awareness.
is just trying
Stigma.
to bring awareness, relate to people. Cause, a lot of people, if we went in to a room and we're just like, hey, like, how many of your parents drank? And then if we had everybody raise their hand and then have them raise it or keep it up if they told themselves they weren't going to drink and then still did,
And still did.
you would probably see the same amount.
Yeah,
of
the same
hands.
amount of hands go up.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I feel like that's another thing is, just having these conversations, that's why I love Wellbrighty, because it talks about a time when our ancestors were pure. Like I know we're so far from that, but it's like when we begin these talks, like it's gonna bring something out. It's gonna bring out another discussion.
Yeah.
Another mentality that that I feel like we can all start feeding into. To see where it takes us. I like talking about a time before, when it was just us. Just from as far North America all the way to as far south, all these different ways we've adopted since then. Because I think about it, like we don't even know our own language. We speak this other language, and then I think about like South America where they speak, it seemed like it was some like divide where they spoke. What do they speak in Brazil?
Portuguese,
Portugal,
Brazilian.
Portuguese and Spanish. It was like they divided. Spain and Portugal had they made some kind of pact where, if you live on this side, you're going to speak Portuguese. If you live on this side, you're going to speak, Latino, Spanish. So it was like, like we've adopted all these other ways, I don't feel like it's just us, that are suffering from this disease. It's like a worldwide thing, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. And then like we just talk about what we see, like, but we don't see the devastation it's causing in all these other countries.
Yeah, reservations.
Yeah, reservations, just tiny towns, like anything. But you know, as long as we're getting the message out there, it might start, inspire somebody else to start getting the
Definitely.
message out there. And so that's kind of like our big key point. And we don't realize like how uncomfortable the topic is. Like we
It is.
say it, but we're almost now used to it. And so like
Yeah.
whenever we're talking about, bringing people on the podcast, they get all like shy. And we're like, it's not, to us, it's like, it's almost normal now. Like it's weird if we don't.
It's
talk
like
about it.
staring at AA to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like if you go somewhere and you have to tell somebody what you're doing or what your job is, they're like, "Oh, you work in behavioral health?
Yeah.
That's a stressful job." And I'm like, "Yeah, it can be." It's like, but-
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, if you're taking it home with you,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like, but I think we create an environment where
You
it's
can
not- it's not that
decompress,
way.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, even with I think we see, our clients that I always think of the one from a couple years ago when we picked them up from jail.
Oh yeah.
And, drove 2.5 hours, 3 hours to treatment. And then they're like, oh, we have a Rona outbreak. We can't take them. And our first response is, of course, a joke. He's like, well, I guess you got to go back to your cell then. And he's like, what? What?
Yeah.
And then we're like, nah, we'll get you. Like, and then-
Yeah.
So like, it's like, in that moment, we could have been completely negative. We could have been like, all right, well, see you later.
Good
but-
luck.
Yeah, but we choose to stick by our people. And then even then, at the end of the day, he was like, you guys have like a blast doing what you're doing. It's so
Yeah.
weird. And we were like, yeah, I mean, we have to stay positive somehow. Like,
Definitely.
like the light at the end of the tunnel is definitely bright, and we see it. And so we just want to keep going towards it, and like we want to have a positive attitude about it, because we were going to hit all these roadblocks all the time.
Definitely.
But as long as we can overcome them and still make jokes about it, we're going to make jokes about
We're
it.
always gonna make
Yeah,
jokes. about
like if there's one thing that's passed down from generation to generation in natives,
Humor.
humor
it.
is the backbone of our resiliency. Because
Definitely.
yeah, like I mean, anybody, like that's how we relate to each other, and that's how we heal each other's through laughter. And so
Good medicine.
yeah, it's definitely great. And then I think it's contagious, because I mean, we see, like I said, we talk about people coming up here just to get a break from their work, and we're like,
Yeah.
"You come to a different office to get a break from work," and they're like,
Yeah, I know, right?
yeah, I'm like, we're in the same building, but
yeah.
like this is where people come up and just let it out and just
Yeah, can come up here and cut up,
Mhm.
and I think that's one thing that we try to destigmatize a lot of things. We're not judging anybody by no means. Like
Just
you know,
each other.
yeah,
Yeah,
just each
just
other,
each
just
other.
Mingo.
So I mean, there's just so many instances where people think they're the worst people. Then they meet me.
You're like, at least I'm not like that guy.
Yeah.
You hear how much he's been accused of? He stole candy from a
Allegedly.
kid.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Well, I did admit that, and brother Will, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's gonna beat me up. Heard my name, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and I have apologized for that. Yeah,
It's first
My
on your
aunt-
amendment list. It's on his list. Yeah.
But there's just so many instances where I can think about. I remember like when we went down to the courts in Oklahoma City, and we did with the Homeless Alliance, and we had all them people from those projects come out, and we were making hot dogs.
Oh yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
trying to remember. I was thinking you were talking about actual court. I was like, I do not remember this.
No, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
what they call it.
Yeah,
Will
yeah,
Rogers
yeah,
Courts.
I remember that. Yeah, we were having a blast out there.
I mean, just the interaction with people, and then I seen like one of my friends.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like one of my homies. Like he didn't even recognize me. Like that's what I thought was weird. Was like, who's this little fat boy that thinks he knows me?
Looking at you, homie.
Yeah. Because he came up talking about his baby mama.
Yeah, and he's like, "Tell her I said what's up."
Yeah.
We're like, "All right, let me write that down."
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Start fighting over it right then.
But I mean, it's just instances like that come to mind where You know, we try to, and it's no way is it a front. You know, my life has been, you know, it ain't all been rainbows and ice cream. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and put on the front like I got this thing figured out, but
Ice cream hurts my tummy.
I can't tell. But you know, what I am able to do is face life. You know, I'm living life on life's terms. You know, by no way do I got this thing figured out. In no way would I ever say that I'm cured. You know, the disease is, you know, that's the tricky thing about this disease is that it's always going to justify having that one drink.
Yep.
It's always going to justify going around them people that I don't need no business, you know. And I'm not going to lie, I miss them, you know. You think we had a good time, man? I was when I have no care in the world, yeah. I'm way funnier, you know.
Yeah. Right now you have one care in the world.
Yes, I do.
Let me lose that one care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Let me lose that one
watch.
care. Watch, you know, I'm a walking, talking comedy show. But you know, I enjoy, you know, I enjoy where my life is, you know, get to see my granddaughter, you know, they were both over this weekend. Got to see all my kids this weekend.
Mhm.
You know, and in my addiction, that was unheard of. You know, I didn't think about nobody but myself. So, you know, I always, you know, like I always say, the proof is in the pudding. You know, I'm pretty fortunate for the way that my life has went, and you know, the hardest thing about the whole getting sober and all of that was deciding when. You know, like it was deciding when that would happen for me.
Mhm.
You know, like I had to have somebody say, you know what, it's okay if you want to heal. You know, like it's okay if you want to deal with life, you know, how, you know, in a healthy way. And it's like nobody ever said that, but you know, like I said, a boy becomes a man when he realizes nobody's coming to save him. You know, so once I figured out that my addiction had the best of me, you know, the defeated don't get to negotiate the terms of surrender. So
Mhm.
whatever that had to look like. So I feel like this was a very
Tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg.
tip of the
I
iceberg.
mean,
now that we
could
figured out how to distort
find
our
out how to
voices.
have these amazing voice effects. I mean, this is gonna be my entertainment.
There's somebody watching from what's that, Schleswig?
Holstein, Germany.
All right. Hey, thank you for tuning in.
Yep,
Do we have any more
Rolf.
comments?
Yeah, then Dave says, "Can I get an all boo in the comments?"
Oh, wait. Hold on. You can do it. Hold on. All right, give a good one.
Oh, boo! This guy. I can just listen to myself.
The
Yeah.
laughs is what gets me. The
Yeah.
We're just so dumb.
I know.
See, this is what sobriety gets you.
Yeah, this is what sobriety gets you. Well, do you have anything else?
You know, I mean, I think we could easily make this a good series this month.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, like I said, we've all been affected by alcohol,
Yes.
and you know, this is just our little portions of the story, and so
There's
I'm
so
pretty
many
sure
more
points of views,
yes,
aspects, all that,
phases.
and so yeah.
Well,
Okay.
like, share, follow, tell your mammy about us. We appreciate all the comments. We appreciate everybody that was able to tune in. Thanks for sharing all those days of sobriety with us. You know, that ain't for us. It's for the person that may need to see
Mhm.
that this thing actually works. So, you know, I'm just happy to be here, you know, and if you need somebody to say it's okay to get sober, I promise you, come to this side, you know, come enjoy, you know, life. You know, everybody deserves to be happy. So with that, I believe we will
Mhm.
see you tomorrow. I hope.